The new Boost Mobile network is offering unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for life.
That sounds like a threat.
Then how do you think we should say it?
Unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for the rest of your life?
I don't know.
Until your ultimate demise.
What if we just say forever?
Okay.
$25 a month, forever.
Get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile forever.
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
Explaining football to the friend who's just there for the nachos? Hard. Tailgating from home like a pro with snacks and drinks everyone will love? An easy win. And with Instacart helping deliver the snack time MVPs to your door, you're ready for the game in as fast as 30 minutes. So you never miss a play or lose your seat on the couch or have to go head-to-head for the last chicken wing. Shop Game Day faves on Instacart and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 grocery orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Other fees and terms apply.
Welcome to 31 Days of Terror, day number 31. I hope that you have enjoyed this year's 31 Days of Terror as much as I have. But we'll do our thank yous at the end. Let's crack into the episode. I have 3 spooky stories for you today, and the last story comes from the 29th of September 2024. And story number 1 comes from Marie. My name is Marie, and Ptolemy is my younger brother. He was so proud and excited when you read his story that he shared it with the whole family. It's on the 2021 31 Days of Terror Day 16 and is the story about the bag-dragging monster. I just wish he had talked to me about it years ago. He doesn't know why the monster was after him. But I do. I remember the day that he was cursed. As my brother said, we lived at the beach in North Carolina. Our neighbourhood was lower middle class, and everybody knew everybody. There was an old lady everyone called Nana Willis. She had an all-day, all-night babysitting service with no reservations needed. If you needed someone to mind your kids for a bit, you dropped them by Nana Willis's house. There were always 4 or 5 kids in the backyard, and babies sleeping in old-fashioned buggies on the screen porch. Nana Willis had a son that everyone called Brother Tommy. I don't have any idea why. His first name might have been Brother, or it might have been a nickname given to him by a sibling. Brother Tommy was special. I don't know how exactly he was different or why. He had some sort of learning disability and a lot of health issues. He was fascinated by shiny, sparkly things and fire. He also had an imaginary friend that Nana called Missy Bugs. Brother Tommy would talk to Missy Bugs and play with her and blame things on her. When Ptolemy was about 2.5 years old, my mama dropped him off at Nana Willis's place while she went to set up tables for bingo night at the church. She left me a note to go and pick him up when I got home from school. As I reached up to open the gate to Nana's backyard, I saw Brother Tommy sitting under the crepe myrtle tree with Tolly, what we used to call Ptolemy when he was little, standing facing him a little to his right. Tolly was talking to the space beside Brother Tommy. I couldn't understand what he was saying, but he was happily babbling away. Just as I stepped through the gate, I saw Nana standing in the middle of the yard staring at Tolly. She had the strangest look on her face. I thought she was fixing to have a fit or a stroke or something. "Hey Nana, you alright?" I asked. "Lord child, you gave me a start," she said, and snapped out of whatever state she was in. I put my hand out to Tolly and said, "We ought to be getting home, little man." He waved at Nana and the kids in the yard. "Bye y'all," he babbled. Then he turned and said, "Bye Bubba, bye Missile Bags." I heard Nana gasp when he said bye to Missy Bugs. I felt pretty creepy too. I pulled him by his hand through the gate and down the street. About 3 or 4 weeks later, I found another note after school telling me I should go and pick up Tolly. I was early coming home from school because my majorette practice was cancelled due to the field being flooded. We had an unusually wet spring that year, and it seemed like it rained every day from 4 to 5 o'clock. As I started down the sidewalk towards Nana's house, the dark clouds started rumbling and rolling and the wind picked up, blowing cool off the ocean and giving me goosebumps. I was in a foul mood because of the weather and missing majorette practice. I had been working up to twirling a fire baton and I was itching to try it. As I went through the gate, I noticed the backyard was empty. I guessed everyone was inside because of the weather. As I stepped up on the back porch, I saw there were no babies sleeping in the buggies. That was odd. I don't think I had ever been to Nana's house and not seen at least one baby on the porch. I thought maybe she had them in the house because of the weather too. I heard some thumping coming from inside the house as I knocked on the back screen door. It sounded like they were having WrestleMania in the front room. I could hear a couple of voices. No one came to the door, so I knocked again a little louder. No one answered the door, so I opened it and called out, "Nana? I'm here to pick up Tolly. It's fixing to be a gully washer out here, so we need to get home quick." There was no reply, but I could hear the voices better now and the thumping was much louder. Manners dictated that I should call out again and wait by the door for someone to invite me in. But I was an impatient teenager being put upon and inconvenienced by my family and the weather, and I was in no mood to mind my manners. I walked through the kitchen to the front of the house where the voices and thumping was coming from. There were no lights on in the house. Maybe the wind had knocked out the power lines. I don't know. As I got to the front room, it took a minute for me to process what I was seeing. There were candles all around the room, and fire was in the fireplace. There were people, I think they were all women, but I can't swear to it, sitting all around the room. In the middle of the room, on the floor, Brother Tommy was flopping around like he was wrestling with an invisible foe. I didn't see Tolly right away, but then I spotted him in the arms of a woman I didn't recognise. She was holding Tolly and it looked like he was sleeping. She kept fanning him with a fan made of large bird feathers. She would take a puff from a tube like the caterpillar in the Alice in Wonderland movie and blow smoke in Tolly's face. All the people were murmuring in unison, but I couldn't tell what they were saying. There was sand or chalk or salt on the floor in a swirly pattern that surrounded Brother Tommy and formed a point where the lady holding Tolly was sitting. "What in the Sam Hill is going on?" I sputtered. Everyone jumped and stopped talking. Nana stood up and came over to me. "You all just keep going. I'll be back directly." She came and took my shoulders and turned me around. She pushed me out of the room and back towards the kitchen. "You're here awful early, Marie Genevieve. Didn't you have practice today?" She seemed so normal that I was confused. Had I really just seen a bizarre gathering in her living room? "No, ma'am, the field is flooded and we can't practice in the gym because of the fire batons," I answered. It felt like someone else was talking through me. What I wanted to say was, what the heck did I just see? She sat me down at her kitchen table and opened a tin of cookies. She poured me a glass of iced tea. I took a bite of cookie and a sip of tea. "You enjoy your snack, darling. I will just go and see if your brother is awake." She patted my shoulder as she walked by. I sat there in a daze, going through the motions of having an after-school snack, but I tasted nothing. I felt like I was watching myself from a high corner of the room. Eventually, Nana came back carrying Tolly. "Little monkey just doesn't want to wake up. Must be the weather. It's good sleeping weather," she said as she handed him to me. He felt like a sack of bricks, but I was glad to have him in my arms. He was warm and cuddly. I thanked Nana for the snack and carried my brother out the back door and down the street to our house. There was no wind, and the sun was peeking bravely through the clouds. The sea was iron grey. Tolly felt so very heavy in my arms. When I reached our house in the middle of the block, I was so relieved. I sat down on the couch and the pets came to greet me. We had a cat and 2 dogs. They all came to see who had come home when I opened the door. The dog started barking at me and the cat hissed and ran away. "Hush up. Hush now, Skeeter. Quiet down, Bear." I was afraid their barking would scare Tolly, but he was dead to the world. I sat down in my daddy's recliner and rocked while I clutched his sleeping body to me. I felt like I was in a dream. Time seemed slow and fast at the same time. I rocked and rocked for what seemed like hours while my little brother slept on. I fell asleep myself at some point. The next thing I heard was my mama coming through the back door, shooing the dogs out of her way. Tolly stirred on my lap and sat up. "Hey sissy, hey mama," he said. Mama picked him up and gave him a big hug. "How is my sweet boy?" she asked him. He giggled a response and hugged her neck. As he looked over her shoulder towards the empty dining room, he said, "Hey, Missa Bags." Tolly talked to Missa Bags non-stop. Sometimes we could understand what he was saying, but most of the time he spoke so quickly we couldn't understand a thing. Brother Tommy started standing on the sidewalk outside our house for hours at a time. Mama would invite him in for a glass of tea, but he would usually just smile and wave and walk away. Every day when I went to school, I would see him on the sidewalk and he would be there when I got home too. I always waved and asked him how he was doing. He would just shrug and sigh as an answer. Most days he was crying, tears just rolling freely down his cheeks. Weeks turned into months and the weather got cooler. It never really got bitterly cold in our town, but it got down near freezing sometimes and it rained. Brother Tommy stood and cried on our sidewalk. If the weather was bad, Nana Willis would come and get him and walk him home. It wasn't easy. He put up a fight and she would bring her wooden spoon and threaten him with a whooping to get him to go with her. One day in February, I remember because I was thinking about what my boyfriend would be getting me, there was frost on the ground in the morning and I could see my breath puffing out in front of me. I saw Brother Tommy on the sidewalk as usual, but he was sobbing like his heart was broken. "Hey, Brother Tommy, are you okay?" I called out to him. "Go away," he shouted at me. I was on my way to school and I did not have time for any foolishness, so I went away. That's when Tolly started having nightmares. He would wake up screaming for Mama multiple times a night. Within a week he looked like he hadn't slept at all. Big dark circles under his eyes. And he would just sit and stare at nothing. He started refusing to go to bed. He told Mama that Missa Bags was bad. Mama looked all around the room and showed Tolly that no one was in the room and that he was safe. But that night he woke up again screaming. And the next night and the next night. Finally, Mama just let him sleep in the bed with her and Daddy. He still woke the whole house up screaming. But at least she didn't have to get up and go to his room to calm him down. The whole family was suffering from the loss of sleep. Easter came in early April that year. The azaleas were in full bloom. We dragged ourselves out of bed and watched Tolly find his basket full of chocolate and Hot Wheels. We had breakfast and got into our fancy new Easter outfits to go to church. We all stepped out into the sunshine. Daddy, Mama, Theodore, my older brother, me and Tolly. There, hanging from a pine tree, was what was left of Brother Tommy. He was hanging by the neck from a noose and his limbs looked like an animal had ravaged them. He was dead. Nana Willis buried Brother Tommy in the Oak Lawn Cemetery a week later. Hundreds of people came out to pay their respects. As far as I know, the case was never solved. No one had any idea how Brother Tommy ended up hanging in the tree, and who or what had torn up his arms and legs is still a mystery. But I have a theory. I think it was Mr. Bags. I think when Nana Willis realised that Tolly could see Mr. Bags, she did some kind of spell to move him from Brother Tommy to Tolly. I think Brother Tommy missed his special friend, and that's why he would cry outside our house. I think Mr. Bags killed Brother Tommy and tore him up because he was interfering with whatever Mr. Bags was planning on doing to Tolly. I think killing Brother Tommy took a lot of energy, and maybe that's why it took 3 or 4 years for him to come back. I think the connection to Tolly wasn't as strong, and that's why it was another 14 years between sightings. I figure getting baptised and being part of the Catholic Church did protect him. Although I feel I should point out that he was christened as a baby, so that should have protected him too. Maybe it did to an extent. Maybe it's just what it needs to gain more strength, or it only appears when Ptolemy is at a low point in his faith. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I've shared this with him, and he's busy searching the internet for any records that pertain to Nana Willis and Brother Tommy. I love that we've come full circle with this story. Marie, thank you for reaching out to me. So if you don't remember Ptolemy's story, it is 31 Days of Terror, day number 16, and it's all about a bag-dragging monster. It was a firm listener favourite and gave me the heebie-jeebies, and it is so fascinating to learn of the origins of this story. So, right, this reminded me of a book that I read recently called The Good People, which is by an author called Hannah Kent. And I've not stopped recommending it to people since I finished reading it. It is such a good book. It is set in pre-famine Ireland, in the west of Ireland, in a rural community where a little boy is born and his grandmother takes this little boy in, and the little boy has some sort of physical and intellectual disability. But because it's pre-famine Ireland, there isn't much known about kind of intellectual disabilities and physical disabilities, and they begin to believe that this little boy is a changeling. And they start to think that any things that have happened in the community that are negative are because of this little boy, and the rituals that they partake in to try and cure this changeling boy reminded me of this story when she goes in and sees all the women sitting around with these little boys doing some sort of ritual. Obviously, Marie's story is not talking about changeling lore, but it is a really good book. It reminded me of that bit of Marie's story, and I would highly recommend it. It's called The Good People, and it's by Hannah Kent. So going back to the story, I'm presuming that Brother Tommy, when he was talking about Missy Bugs, was actually talking about Mr. Bags. And that all the while that he was talking about Missy Bugs and blaming her for things that were happening, what he was actually talking about was Mr. Bags. And I wonder if when Nana Willis realised that Tolly could see Mr. Bags or Missy Bugs too, that she was like, oh, this is real. Like, was there stuff happening in the house? Was Brother Tommy saying or doing things that were weird? And then she was like, oh no, this is supernatural, this is real, because Tolly can see this thing too. And who were all the women in the front room that were all there with the kids doing obviously some sort of ritual, whatever that ritual was, whether that was a ritual that was trying to protect the kids, or like you thought maybe it was a ritual that was moving the bag monster from Brother Tommy to Tolly. Like, whatever the reason was, who were all these women? What was the ritual that they were doing? And where did the ritual come from? And I mean, it obviously worked in a way, because Tolly ended up having all of these hideous nightmares and really struggling. And then Brother Tommy was obsessed with your house and couldn't break himself away from it. It seems absolutely wild that this entity, whatever it is, did this to Brother Tommy. Like, it's just absolutely horrendous. What a hideous, awful thing to happen. I am glad, however, that Ptolemy has the support of his family, because that is bloody important.
To get people excited about Boost Mobile's new nationwide 5G network, we're offering unlimited talk, text, and data for $25 a month.
Forever.
Even if you have a baby.
Even if your baby has a baby.
Even if you grow old and wrinkly and you start repeating yourself.
Even if you start repeating yourself.
Even if you're on your deathbed and you need to make one last call.
Or text.
Right, or text the long-lost son you abandoned at birth.
You'll still get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile.
Forever!
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
Forever!
Forever.
Weight loss. It needs to be fast and sustainable. Noom GLP-1 starts at just $149 and ships to your door in 7 days. Take it from Clevassier, who lost 35 pounds on Noom.
It's a psychological thing, too. Noom is teaching me the habit so I do not have to be on weight loss meds forever.
$149 GLP-1s? Now that's Noom smart. Get started at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. Individual results may vary. Not all customers will medically qualify for prescription medications. Compounded medications are not reviewed by the FDA for safety, efficacy, or quality.
Hey, true crime fans. Tired of ads interrupting your gripping investigations? Good news. With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. After all, ads shouldn't be the scariest thing about true crime. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free true crime. That's amazon.com/ad-free true crime to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Decisions.
Wait a minute. Are you still looking for cars on Carvana?
Yeah, decisions.
When I used Carvana, I found the exact car I was looking for in minutes. Bought it on the spot.
Electric or full diesel? Decisions.
Come on, you've been at it for weeks. Just buy it already.
You're right. Crossover it is. Decisions decided.
Whether you know exactly what you want or like to take your time, buy your car the convenient way with Carvana.
And story number 2 comes from Matthew. This story happened around 2004 or 2005 when I was 9 or 10 years old, in a little town called Cricklade in the English county of Wiltshire. Me and my cousin Joe were home alone in the downstairs living room playing on the PlayStation, and my parents were at my auntie's house, which was just a few houses down our street. We were both playing our game quite happily when I started to hear noises. At first I thought nothing of it. It was probably someone outside. But then it got louder and sounded like footsteps on the floorboards above us upstairs. We both looked at each other and said we heard it, so we paused the game and listened carefully. The sounds of footsteps got louder. It was as if someone was in my bedroom above, walking around in circles. This continued for a short time, and then the voices started. We could not make out what was being said, as the voice was little more than a whisper. The whispering continued for a while, and then someone or something laughed. At this point, we were both very freaked out. We decided to investigate, and so we reluctantly walked out of the living room towards the stairs. The whispering and the footsteps had stopped now. We approached the bottom of the stairs, and as I looked up, I saw a man walking down the stairs. This man, however, was see-through. I could literally see through him. He had an old, long, black trench coat on and had short, curly, dark hair. Me and Joe were both frozen in horror as the man looked at us and smiled. But this was no happy, pleasant smile. It was a sinister smile that still to this day sends shivers down my spine. We both turned on the spot, crying and screaming in terror, and ran back into the living room, slamming the door shut, hiding from the man. We hid with our backs against the door until my gramp turned up at the house shortly after, and we told him the story of what we saw. He looked around the house and told us nothing happened and that nothing was there, and as I expected, my parents later that day told me it was our imagination. I never saw that man again ever, but I always felt something negative in that house. Whenever I walked up the stairs, I felt like something was following me or watching me. Years after that, myself and my other cousin Con stupidly decided to do our own Ouija board outside the house. We contacted a man who claimed he was called Wallace. It started with the usual yes and no answers, but it soon turned weird. He began saying creepy things, and eventually the cup we were using was chucked and turned upside down. We ended the Ouija board and never tried it again. Many years have passed now, and I have not lived or been in that house since 2012. It has since been knocked down and rebuilt on with new houses. To this day, I don't know who Wallace was. Was he the man on the stairs? If so, why did he show himself to me that day? What did he want? I may never know, and perhaps it's best if I don't. So here's my question, right? Did the house feel weird and uncomfortable before this happened? Like, I wonder, did you feel those feelings of discomfort going up the stairs beforehand? Did you ever hear footsteps beforehand? I wonder, did your parents hear footsteps beforehand? Or did it all just happen kind of in this one incident? And weirdly, it sounds like in this particular incident that the energy like built over time. It wasn't just you instantaneously saw this man. It like started small with little footsteps on the floorboards. Then they got louder. You could hear it like walking around in circles. And then we got a whisper. Then you got a laugh. And then you got the man, the see-through transparent man coming down the stairs with a long black trench coat and short curly dark hair with a sinister smile. It sounded like it built rather than it just seeing an apparition. And I wonder if it was to do with the fact that there was like two kid energies in the house. We know that kid energy can cause weird things to happen, you know, like poltergeist activity, etc. Maybe that was a part of it, that it was young energy in the house and this man was able to like harness that energy to appear. Either way, it's grim. It is creepy. It'd be interesting to try and find out if there was any reference to a man named Wallace in the local records who maybe, I don't know, did something sinister or died young, or, you know, because that might give you an indication as to who or what this man was and whether it was linked to the Ouija board session that you did with your other cousin. And our final story today comes from Zachary. I never tell many people about this encounter, not even my own parents. This was way back in 2006. We lived in an old farmhouse on Hargis Creek Road in Waynesburg, Pennsylvania. Our house was actually bought and torn down to be the new West Green Elementary School. I was 11 at the time. It was a Friday night and the start of the weekend, so I was allowed to stay up as long as I wanted. My mom was upstairs asleep. I was downstairs in the living room watching Adult Swim on the TV. The next thing I heard was an upstairs door slowly open, and the sound that followed after that was somehow going down the stairs on all fours like a dog or an animal. Little 11-year-old me was just wrecked with fear and beginning to turn around to see what was making this noise. Whatever this thing was didn't waste any time. It came flying through the living room doorway and leaped onto my back, pinning me to the carpet. It was like this shadow person with a slender figure. It also had this long flowing hair that went all the way down its back. It had a very slender woman-like figured frame. I want to say it was at least 5.5 to 6 feet tall. It was hard to gauge as it was crawling. Anyway, I was just laying there with this thing on my back, freaking out. It had me locked in a wrestling starting position. It didn't have a feeling to it. Just felt like something heavy wrapping itself around me. I was trying to call out to my mom, but the only thing that was coming out was a strained whisper. This thing had me in some sort of waking sleep paralysis state. I was fearing and bracing for the worst, but it never did anything other than that. After a few moments of this thing holding me, I could feel myself getting more and more tired, and before I knew it, I passed right out. And there I awoke in the same position the next morning with Saturday morning cartoons playing on Cartoon Network. I passed it off as a bad dream. I never saw this thing for years, but I felt like it was still hanging around. My dad had remarried, and I don't want to speak ill of anyone, but let's just say she liked to have a few drinks. She was a good stepmom, just a troubled person. We had some strange activity at my dad's house after this. Never anything at my mom's house though. Doors opening and slamming in the night, waking up in fear in the middle of the night for no reason at all, my blankets getting pulled sometimes, and I'd wake up sometimes in that same sleep paralysis state, but it wouldn't be there. Now I only saw this thing one other time, and that was one night a couple of months before my stepmom sadly passed from a DUI related injury. I was a fully grown man at the time in my mid-20s. I was sitting on the couch at my dad's watching some late night anime on Toonami. This time it didn't bother me or anything, it just crawled right down the hallway to her bedroom. After my stepmom sadly passed, I have never seen this thing again. Why is this thing scrabbling around on all fours? Oh, that has really given me the heebie-jeebies for sure. So this thing is tall, slender, long dark hair, female frame, sort of jumps on your back, pins you down, kind of knocks you out essentially, and then you wake up and it's gone, but it doesn't feel like it's negative or angry. It's just a thing. I wonder, was it some kind of embodiment of negative energy? But the thing itself wasn't necessarily negative. I really disliked that description at the end of you sitting up watching anime and then it just crawled down the fucking hallway to her bedroom. Oh, that has me looking over my shoulder. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Thank you to Marie, Matthew and Zachary for sending in your stories. Remember, the last story came from the 29th of September 2024. Now, we will be back as usual with a main episode on Sunday. And I need to thank the wonderful Monster Fuzz podcast, the wonderful This Paranormal Life, the wonderful William C. Graves, and of course, for doing a mammoth 4 episodes with me, the wonderful Tim Cloak. They have all contributed to this year's 31 Days of Terror, and I appreciate them so much. Also, thank you to you for listening along for 31 days. I do see your comments and messages, etc. on social media. However, I tend to stay away from social media as much as possible, so I don't often engage in the way that I should on social media, but I see your comments, I see your loveliness, I appreciate you every single day. I love you all and thank you all for listening. I hope that if you are celebrating Halloween today, that you have a really wonderful, spooky and safe time. And if you would like to send in a spooky story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com, and if you are desperate for some extra spooky content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or $2 a month you get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.
To make switching to the new Boost Mobile risk-free, we're offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
So why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Because you have nothing to lose. Boost Mobile is offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
No, I asked why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Oh.
Wouldn't.
Because you love wasting money as a way to punish yourself because your mother never showed you enough love as a child?
Whoa. Easy there.
Yeah.
Applies to online activations. Requires port in and auto pay. Customers activating in stores may be charged non-refundable activation fees.